O'Doherty is in town, and you are listening to episode 1. Yes, that's right. Episode 1, take 2 of the O'Doherty's Den official Rise podcast. Before everything kicked off, I had a plan to do this podcast every month where it was going to be reviews and previews of the monthly shows that we were going to be having, because we had every single month booked in at Eiger Studios throughout 2020 for the unplugged shows, and then we had all the Brunel big shows as well as any other stuff we would be doing in the meantime. So we had like huge plans for 2020. I think there was even, just in Leeds alone, 18 shows planned. Plenty of shows, I'll tell you that much. Well over 20 shows we were going to be having in 1 year, whereas that was like 2 years worth of shows, if not more. So it's now coming up to 2021, and 6 years we've been operational now, Rise, since 2014 when the first show happened in Middlesbrough. But I've been going through all the archives lately, watching all that old stuff, and it's crazy to see now, looking back with this perspective, like years later, and having this downtime we've had this year to reflect. I've seen this now as a real blessing that we've had this time to go back and look at all that stuff and reflect on everything, how mental everything was getting with Rise, where it was just constant shows, one show after the other, and we were gaining all this great momentum, but it was just, I never had time as a one-man band to be able to stop and actually focus on different areas that I always wanted to focus on, such as the online stuff with YouTube, this podcast, and all the things that I originally wanted to do when Rise began back in 2013. So we ran the show in 2014, the first one, but Rise itself, the concept, I'm realising now, after, like I say, going through all them old files, I've found things from 2012 when we had the Rise logo, early 2012. So it's been around a long time in our minds, me and Caden. And it came into the physical world in 2014 in Middlesbrough. But anyway, I've already got off the track. I was introducing the podcast saying this is episode 1, take 2. So them episodes that I did do last year, or this year, 2020, whenever you listen to this, are going to be just exclusively available on Patreon. So if you're a Patreon subscriber, you'll have already heard the first, was it 4 podcasts I did last year? 3 or 4, and then I did the one with Casanova Valentine as well last year, the year before that, after the Games of Death. So they are going to be available for Patreon subscribers to listen to any time, and I'm just going to label them now. They were billed as episode 1, 2, 3. So I'm going to change them now to Patreon exclusive episode 1, 2, 3, and this is going to be the official episode 1. And I'm going to try yet again to get on iTunes and all the podcast apps, because I have no idea what I'm doing still. I've been trying to watch YouTube tutorials there last night to see what I do, so I'm going to follow what I'm told, and hopefully I'll get on iTunes and you'll be able to listen to this wherever you get your podcasts from. You'll have Danny O'Doherty in your lugs, bonny lad. And as I was saying, with them original podcast, it was going to be monthly. We were going to do different guests at the shows, so I'd have the preview of the upcoming shows. I'd then take this mic with us to the shows and get like different little short interviews with people, and then I would review the shows, and that was what each episode was going to be. But obviously all that went completely out the window with all our other plans and shows and events. So I only managed to do them 3 podcasts that were on issues that needed talking about at the time. So I'm going to actually take you back now to that first January 2020 episode, when we were all so young and naive and didn't know what was to come. Let's get ready to rumble, bonny lad! The 2020 Rise Rumble review. What a show we had. If you haven't seen it, I would advise now to go and watch. It's on, the whole match is on Patreon now. You can watch the full Rise Rumble there. The other undercard matches are going to be posted very soon, and it's going to be available for everyone else to watch on YouTube in a couple of months' time. And I have to say, it absolutely blew all my expectations out the water yet again. The Rise Rumble every year seems to top itself. If you thought last year's couldn't get any better, then look what happened this year. That swerve at the end, that final, I don't think anyone could have predicted that. Big Joe won the Rumble for the second time. I've got goosebumps talking about it again. The former pastor, Bill Ever, Saxon Huxley, Gene Money, and Big Joe were the final four. Bill Ever, a former Rise champion, a former Rise Rumble winner. Saxon Huxley, a former Rise champion. Big Joe, a former Rise champion. And then Gene Money, who has had one shot at the Rise Championship in 2018 against Dr. Darwin. And he's never got close to that Rise Championship since. The sexual gammon, that damn dirty dog, has been on the rise in British wrestling all over the country these last few months. But he was a true Rise original. Started here in 2015, and it was clear that the Rise faithful wanted to see Gene Money rise to the top. But it was not to be. Eliminated by Saxon Huxley, and then Bill Ever eliminated by Saxon. We were down to Saxon and Big Joe. Saxon, what a year he's had it this year in Rise. 1 year previously, he'd showed up in the Rise Rumble 2019. Just when we thought he'd gone, just when we thought he'd left, he said his goodbyes. Everyone was sad to see him go at Big Joe's Christmas Bash. We thought we were waving him off to NXT UK, but at the Rise Rumble, a masked figure appeared. After Boris Kozlov showed up and cleaned house, it was his return as well. Saxon Huxley turned up, boom, hoid Boris Kozlov over the top, revealed that it was the Demon Slayer, the psychedelic Samaritan. There he goes. There goes Saxon Huxley. He was in Rise to stay, and he wasn't going anywhere. And throughout 2019, he was totally dominant. He got to the final of the ASCENT Tournament against Boy One, the amazing Boy One. A moment's distraction cost him, and we saw an amazing moment as Boy One became the ASCENT Tournament winner. So Big Joe and Saxon were the last two. Big Joe comes charging in with that cannonball. Out goes Saxon, and Big Joe was declared for the second time the Rise Rumble winner. So the first winner in 2017 was Pastor Bill Ever. The second winner in 2018 was Dr. Darwin, when he screwed over Big Joe, his former best friend, to become the Rumble winner. And then 2019 was Big Joe. And 2020, the history books will say Big Effin' Joe once again. But he didn't leave with the Rise Championship. The Prophet had returned. Rest in peace, the Doctor. Long live the Prophet. Darwin is back. And he's the Rise Champion. That damn dirty dog who made it to the last four in the Rumble. Earlier on, he faced CJ Banks, the gatekeeper. These two had been back and forward on Twitter. CJ Banks reckoned G Money was an absolute joke. He didn't take this business seriously. That he thinks wrestling's a laugh. Well, that damn dirty dog proved that he was no joke. When Ainsley Lariat connected with CJ Banks and got in that 1-2-3, talking about these matches isn't going to do it any justice. You're going to have to watch. These matches will be available. Keep an eye out. YouTube.com/TheRiseOnline. Dom Black came out. We thought we were just about to go into the Rumble. Dom came out, the Park of York, with his Livin' La Vida local entrance. Everyone's singing and dancing. We thought we were going in for a laugh. But it turns out the Park of York had something on his mind. He wanted his hands on Sean Only. He wanted to prove that he could beat Sean Only, who's been terrorising Dom for the last few shows. After that match with Sugar Duncan, he attacked Dom and the Gimp, the red flag. And then in Middlesbrough, it was Dom versus Sean Only. Sean beat him again after being attacked from the word go. So this time Dom came out. He demanded that Sean Only get out here. Before this Rumble could begin, he needed to prove something. So Sean Only obliged. He came out on stage, but he said he had nothing to prove. He's already beat him, so why would he face Dom? There's no reason for him to face him when he's already proved that he is apparently the better man. Now, this didn't settle well with the Park of York, who, as it's been said on many occasions, has rose from the bottom to the top. He has fought his way from being a nobody to being one of the most loved stars in Rise. He's earned every bit of it. But now Sean only didn't think he was worthy of this. So Sean, provoking him even more, he knew how passionate Dom is. So he made him put his career on the line. He said, if you want to face me, you need to put not only your spot in the Rumble on the line, not only your spot in Rise on the line, but your entire British wrestling career. If you lose, you must leave British wrestling and retire. Now, we did not want to see the Porky Hawk ever in that position. I don't think anyone ever thought we would. But because of that passion, the Porky Hawk accepted. He just wanted his hands on Sean O'Leary. And that's when the red flag beaten down on the Porky Hawk. He didn't have to do it. He still had the option to say no. Cowboy John asked, did he want to compete? And yes, he did. The match began. And despite the fight of his life from Dom Black, it was not enough. Sean O'Leary sent Dom Black packing out of British wrestling. And the Pork had to say his goodbyes in front of the Brunel. A really sad moment as the bow tie was left in the middle of the ring. Dom mentioned in his promo there at the end. Wait, it's not a promo because he's finished, isn't he? So it's I think it was a genuine, heartfelt speech. He talked about how much wrestling plays on not only your physical health but your mental health. How hard it is, the ups and downs of being in this business, striving to become a professional wrestler and all, and how hard it is and how cutthroat it is. So to see Dom goes, it seemed like he was just peaking, he's just starting to become a big star. And it's over for Dom Black. So after that 2020 Rise Rumble, we next had Unplugged, the very first Unplugged at Tiger Studios. We hadn't been to Tiger Studios since 2017, and I'd thought ever since then that we were barred from there, because I think there was something happened where there was all the carry-on where they were out in the street fighting, and Joe hit Caden with a plank of wood that was on fire, and there was, I think someone went through the wall or something. I'm sure there was a big dent in the wall, and people were telling me later, like months later. But anyway, we didn't hear from Tiger Studios for a long time after that, and we just moved on and thought, oh, well, we'll keep our heads down, do our shows at the Brunel. We've got Temple of Boom, and we had Chief Street at the time, till they pulled the plug and all. But Tiger Studios, turns out, are absolutely brilliant. So I can't wait to get the ball rolling again at Tiger Studios. When you look back now on the names of the shows, though, because the whole series of Unplugged shows didn't happen, we've rebranded that to just Unplugged. So that show will now be remembered as Rise Unplugged. So if there's ever an Unplugged 2 or an Unplugged 3, they'll be yearly events rather than monthly like they were going to be, the original Unplugged concept. So the second show at Tiger Studios, which was the Extreme Rise Rumble, was at the time marketed as Unplugged 2, the Extreme Rise Rumble. But we're going to just scrap the Unplugged 2 and just have it as, looking back, the Extreme Rise Rumble. Makes a lot more sense to just do it that way. So the 3 shows we did manage to do this year in 2020 were the Rise Rumble 2020, Unplugged at Tiger Studios, and the Extreme Rise Rumble 2020. Which one did you enjoy the most? Which was the best show of 2020, even though we only got those 300-hour belts? Let us know. I'd love to hear what the Rise Faithful think. So I might whack that in the Rise Faithful group and see if we can put a vote on it and see who we think is show of the year for 2020. So at Unplugged, we saw Big Joe versus Leonardo Darwin. This was the first time Joe would get his hands on Darwin after he came back at the Rise Rumble 2020 to steal the Rise Championship from Big Joe's grasp. And it had been announced a few days before that Bill Eaver, the pastor, was stepping aside from professional wrestling. And everyone thought he was gone. But at the end of Big Joe versus Leonardo Darwin for that Rise Championship, a masked man appeared. And when he took the mask off, guess who? Bill Eaver. And he was responsible for Leonardo Darwin retaining the Rise Championship that night and screwing Big Joe out of his chance. yet again. So the following month at the Extreme Rise Rumble, we saw Big Joe face Bill Eaver in his old pastor get-up, and Bill Eaver was defeated. The loser was actually as well going to be barred from ringside in the main event when Gene Money faced Leonardo Darwin. Gene Money had beaten Saxon Huxley at Unplugged for the number one contendership. What a match they had. You can see that at YouTube. All these things I'm talking about are all available at youtube.com/TheRiseOnline. And that match they had was world class. Gene Money coming out on top to get his rematch against Leonardo Darwin. Gene Money faced Leonardo Darwin for the Rise Championship for the first time in 2018. I think it was, I'll tell you when it was. It was ASCENT 2018. It was 2018. So Leonardo Darwin faced Gene Money in the Rise Championship match at ASCENT. And he did his whole shtick as his American cousin Dalton Darwin. You can see that at YouTube and all. Darwin had all these mind games. He had a bunch of lads with him at ringside. And the cunning plan of the evil good doctor paid off yet again. And he managed to beat Gene Money on that night. But fast forward 2 years later, Gene Money, a different man, had his rematch. And he absolutely took the good doctor's head clean off with his Ainsley Lariat and beat him 1-2-3 in the quickest Rise Championship match in Rise history. That damn dirty dog had risen, and he'd done it for our Uncle Bobby. So Gene Money still is currently the Rise champion, and we've been debating what we're going to do for the last few months about that. We've been thinking, well, we've always had that rule where if the champion hasn't defended for a year, then he automatically loses the championship. But then we thought, well, that's not fair because he's never even had the opportunity to defend the belt. And he'd be raring to go at a moment's notice. So what we're going to do is we're going to allow Gene Money to defend the belt against a new number one contender that will be decided on the first night back. But I'll get into that more later in this episode, else I'll end up losing my trail of thought. So Gene Money had won the Rise Championship. He'd finally triumphed. He was on top. And then it was supposed to be the Games of Death the following month with that big weekender where it would be Unplugged, what was going to be Unplugged 3 the night before, and then the Games of Death on the Saturday. But before we move on to talk about the Games of Death and the upcoming Games of Death 2, let's talk about the two biggest stars from that night, that final night before lockdown. Miles's dad. What a performance he put in that Extreme Rise Rumble. He managed to become that God champion for a very short period as well when he pinned Benji. And then he was eliminated by his own son, Miles. Now, the match that everyone wanted to see before lockdown was Miles versus Dad, and that had been built up for months, as we'd seen them back and forward in this family feud. But that match actually did happen last year at the 5th anniversary show in Middlesbrough, and I'm going to put that match online. I don't think it's ever been seen before. Miles versus Dad. I'm going to put that up at youtube.com again, /TheRiseOnline. So that match will be one of the upcoming full match Fridays, Miles versus Dad. The match everybody wanted to see that actually happened. And I did have some sad news that is breaking here for the first time. That Miles's dad contacted me a few months ago saying that he didn't think it was going to be possible that he'll be able to wrestle in the future. Well, in the near future. And he's got perfectly valid reasons for that. And all I can say is, I wish Miles's dad all the best. And hopefully he'll come back because the door is wide open for him. He was the rightful number one contender, as voted for by the Rise faithful, to face Gene Money before lockdown. So if Miles's dad wants to come back and take up his shot at that Rise Championship, then he'll be welcome with open arms, and I'm sure we'll all welcome him back with open arms. So will Miles's dad be a part of these upcoming shows? We will find out in 2021. So that's why we need to crown a new number one contender. Miles's dad has that opportunity when he wants it, but we need to find someone to face Gene Money. We're cooking up a few number one contenders because we've got the ASCENT Tournament still ongoing. Jack Turner has beat BA in the first round. You saw that match where they fought on the moors. They couldn't wait till Rise returns to the ring. They took it up onto the moors and brayed the snot out of each other for well over 10 minutes. And Jack Turner came out on top, so Jack Turner progresses into the next round of the ASCENT Tournament. We've got a few backup options for the ASCENT Tournament, so we can absolutely guarantee you that the ASCENT Tournament 5 will take place and will continue. We're not going to just let that go, because the ASCENT Tournament is one of them things where for years we've persevered with that concept and that idea. And now that we're at the 5th tournament, this is when I think the ASCENT Tournament is really starting to mean something. Primate won ASCENT 1. The second winner was the Pastor. The third winner was the Pastor. And the fourth winner was the amazing Boy 1. So it's a prestigious list of ASCENT champions. And the ASCENT winner goes on to face the Rise champion. And it's usually been at Somerset. So with a bit of luck, that might be the case in 2021, because the final string of shows that we have booked on August the 7th is Rise Somerset, and that's an exclusive that I can reveal to you right here now on the podcast. August the 7th will be Rise Somerset, and we're going to let you know all about that very soon. But anyway, back to what I was talking about. I've completely lost my trail of thought yet again. I'm getting carried away here. What were we talking about? Because I need to make sure it's all in order, else it'll just be... You'll not be able to make head and a tail of this. I think I might have myself another coffee in a minute and all. I've been off the drink for months. I haven't had a drink since since that video I made. That one where it was me attacking Caden in the park. That was the last session I had. So I haven't been on the drink since then. So how many months is that I've been sober now? Maybe even... Oh, it wasn't as long as the time I was sober before. When I was actually doing the gimmick, the sober gimmick. I'm not just completely committed to being sober and that's it now. I'm just keeping an open mind about it. So I've never had any real opportunities to be going out and drinking lately. So I thought there's no point drinking now. So I thought, right, I'll knock that on the head. I'll not do that anymore. And I'll just drink when there's an opportunity, when there's a big occasion and things like that. So I'm possibly going to have a drink over Christmas. I might do. But I might not. And I might keep me straight going like a prime dead man. So I'll keep you updated about that as these podcasts go on. Me and the booze, how are we getting on? What on earth were we talking about originally? We were talking about the Unplugged show. We were talking about Miles's dad. We were talking about Gene Money becoming the Rise champion. The Games of Death was planned. Right, so we'll talk about that. I think that's what was next anyway. I need to start making notes about what I'm talking about here. But if I have notes, I end up sat looking at them, so I cannot win. Right, Games of Death. So the Games of Death 2 is organised for, at the moment, it's November the 6th, 2021, which is actually my birthday. We had a show in 2015 on that date as well, I think. Was it 2015? It was the one where it was the Bring Your Own Booze show in Temple Works in Leeds. So it is penciled in for November the 6th, the Games of Death. But with the Games of Death, we want to wait until all restrictions are dropped till we run that show, because everyone involved wants to put on the show of their lives. We want to make this the best deathmatch tournament ever in Europe. So we do not want to half-ass it, and we don't want to be doing it under regulations where we've got a limited amount of people in the crowd or we've got restrictions we have to abide by. We want to be able to completely express ourselves truly and give you the tournament that you've paid to see, because there's already been all those tickets sold for last year's event that was scheduled, which are now all still valid for this 2021 tournament, or whenever it happens, Games of Death 2. So all those tickets, I do urge you to hold on to them, because we aren't going to put any more on sale until we know what the numbers are going to be like. So at the moment, as it stands, the event is technically sold out. But obviously close to the time, if we hear that, right, all regulations are lifted, you can do what you want in terms of numbers, then we'll put the tickets back on sale and we'll try and get a bigger room. And we'll make it as special as it possibly can be. And we want to bring in Schlack, we want to bring in Casanova again. So we're going to make sure that it is absolutely top-notch. Big F and Joe is gagging for it. Caden's gagging for it. Darko's gagging for it. Lou Nixon's gagging for it. They all cannot wait for the Games of Death. So they're going to have the Outlaw Cup while they're waiting. And that's going to be the first night back. And I can give you another exclusive right now. The first show back, I didn't even realise at the time when I booked the date in, is WrestleMania weekend, and that can only mean one thing, that we're all pointing at the sign. So this first show on March the 27th is going to be Rise, Point at the Sign, the hardcore edition, featuring the Outlaw Cup. So we're going to have the Outlaw Cup as part of Point at the Sign, and that will be at Eiger Studios. Now, Point at the Sign has always been at Brunel, and if it was in an ideal world, we would have it at Brunel, but we're sticking to these shows we've got at Eiger. We're going to make them work, because I can still see it being under restrictions by then. These aren't going to go anywhere, these restrictions, as far as I'm concerned, for a good while. So we stuck with this world for now, and that's what I'm trying to do. I'm just trying to make the best of what we've got. So the thinking behind the dates is that March 27th will be coming out of winter into spring. I'm thinking there's going to be another lockdown in January, most likely, and we'll be under restrictions until at least the back end of March. Lockdown, proper restrictions. So I'm thinking this will be the first sort of time where those restrictions will be getting lifted, and we'll be able to have limited capacity shows by around that time. So fingers crossed for that. And then we've got everything else booked for March, May, June, July, August. So it's all in the summer months. And the reason, again, behind that is if there is restrictions still in place at that time, and they say that we can't do the shows indoors, then we'll take it to the farm that we had sorted for last summer, because we only managed to get that place sorted right at the back end of summer, which was unfortunate, because we could have done some shows in July or whenever we could have got them sorted. The only problem was the indoor events restrictions, but they might have changed in 2021. They might say that indoor events are allowed back with a limited capacity, and that's what we're planning for. So we're going to make sure that we've got those backup options for those string of shows we've got booked, and we haven't yet booked anything for the winter apart from the Games of Death, which is penciled in. So in a dream world, restrictions will be dropped by then, and we'll be able to run the Games of Death. But just in case, we've got it penciled in that can be moved, and we haven't booked anything else in for the end of the year to make sure that they don't get shut down. So we'll play it by ear. By July, August, we might be looking like there aren't going to be lockdowns again next year, next winter. And then we'll be able to book some more shows, and we'll be able to do Spooky Slam and whatever we want to do after that. So that's the planning behind them. We've got the winter to get through, and then we can look forward to a few Rise shows. And it doesn't matter if they're under restrictions or what. We're just going to try and put on the best shows we can, given the circumstances. But let's bring it all back to the present. And what we've got to end the year 2020 is the end of year sale. We need to get rid of all this stock we've got that's built up. There's a few tie-dye shirts, one of a kind. There's a few Games of Death shirts. They'll be super limited edition, because obviously the only ones that'll have ever been printed will be those, that one batch. And I think there was only 30 of them done, so they are an exclusive shirt, and it'll be the show that never happened, 2020, and we're going to get a new Games of Death shirt design for the upcoming tournament. So if you want to get your hands on that limited edition Games of Death shirt, there's only a few left, and they will be in this end of year sale, which is starting on Boxing Day, and it'll be running up until January the 1st. Because on January the 1st is the big day for Rise Underground. For the last few months, well, basically since the lockdown, the first one began in March, I put all my eggs in the basket of 2021 in terms of spending this year and using it to redevelop the brand and figure out how I can make this work in an uncertain world. Rather than being reliant on only events on the night, I've restructured everything in the background, been working on loads of different projects and ideas, and it's coming together well now, and it's looking like it's going to be ready for January to kick things off, perfectly timed with the Rise website that's coming, the brand new riseengland.com. And the Rise website is going to be the new home for Rise, so hopefully people are going to start going to the website rather than the social media pages. So to get all your Rise updates, to watch all the full shows that are available online, and that will be more coming in full HD. I'm doing re-edits of all the past shows from over the years in full HD, and they'll be coming as and when over these next few weeks and months. There's a full backlog of shows already available on YouTube, and it's not like they're in low quality. They're still really good quality shows. It's just I'm uploading them to be the absolute best quality they can be, so that they're available for years to come for people to watch online. And at the riseengland.com website, launching January the 1st, you'll be able to see all of those shows in order from, I think it's the 2018 Summer Sesh that's the first one available, all the way through till the present day. Or there's the 2018 Rise Rumble match that's available as well, but we didn't release any more of those shows that year because they were getting kept for on-demand services. But now I've decided that I'm just going to go all in with YouTube, and that was what the plan was, as I said earlier. Back when I started Rise in 2013, I wanted to make it a YouTube-based promotion. And then I sort of diverted from that, and I'm back to it yet again, and that's where me priority lies at the minute, is with YouTube and getting Rise exposed to the world through our videos. It's mental when you look at the analytics, at the stats of who's watching Rise, because our biggest two markets in the world are the USA and India. Hundreds of thousands of hours of views have taken place in India of Rise content. And then number 2 is the United States, number 3 is the United Kingdom. So hopefully one day you might see Rise over there, if we're ever allowed to go on planes ever again. Now I'm trying to rewind my brain again to figure out what we were talking about. Games of Death, the reorganised tournament. Oh yeah, that was it. I was talking about how I'd used 2020 to sort of steer everything in the direction of online-based stuff and trimming the fat, so to speak, in terms of just getting rid of all the stuff that's on there that doesn't need to be there and just getting it down to the bare basics, all our best stuff in full HD quality, best way to present it, and as easily accessible as possible. I've had time to think about what's the most important aspects of Rise and to put them first and to promote them as their own brands within themselves. And you'll see that with Women's Wrestling Underground, which is a new brand within itself. So it's Rise Women's Wrestling Underground, and there's a few matches uploaded to YouTube now. And that comes after the introduction of the Rise Women's Championship back in 2018. There was a tournament, an 8-woman tournament to crown the first champion. And you can watch that in full as well at YouTube. That is going to be uploaded as the Women's Wrestling Underground first tournament. And in the new year, you're going to see the Women's Wrestling Underground second tournament. And that will be for the Rise Women's Championship. The Voodoo Queen currently holds that belt and has done since 2018. But will she be able to outlast 7 others? The women's division is really kicking off in Rise. We've got Roxy there leading the charge, who had a match with someone just before the lockdown who had possibly the most impressive debut we've seen in Rise. Casey, who turned up on the night just to help set up the ring as a local trainee and was given the opportunity to face Roxy that night. She didn't even have any entrance music ready to go or anything. She had a gear with her like all good trainees do, and she faced Roxy that night, and what a match they had. I couldn't believe it. She came up just short to the more experienced wrestler Roxy, but that was enough to secure her a place in Women's Wrestling Underground and this upcoming Women's Wrestling Underground tournament. So we've got 2 there from the new generation, Cindy and Casey, guaranteed to be big stars in the future, and you can see them compete against some of the most experienced women in the country. The full lineup for that tournament will be announced very soon, but you can guarantee that we're going to see those prominent women's stars from Rise. Roxy, the Voodoo Queen, Cindy. We've got Lizzie Evo, who went to the final with the Voodoo Queen in the first tournament. She has dominated the women's division for a long time, and she's still only young herself. And over the next few years, Women's Wrestling Underground is going to take off. Believe me. More information will be available at the Rise England website. You'll be able to see all the updates about Women's Wrestling Underground and what we've got coming up for 2021. And we will continue to upload all of the backlog of those women's matches from Rise under the new Women's Wrestling Underground banner up onto YouTube. So keep an eye out for them. There's been a few already as part of the Full Match Fridays. And finally, the last project to tell you about. I think I've covered everything. I probably haven't, mind. I'll listen to this back and I'll think I've forgot to talk about all sorts and I've skipped over this and that, the other. I was talking about the 2 stars that came from that last show before lockdown, Extreme Rise Rumble. Obviously, we had Casey in the women's division, but the Turquoise Terror, Jeremy Fenton, who beat Sean Only with the help of Liam Slater, who's now entered himself into the ASCENT Tournament. He's been gone for a couple of years and we hadn't seen him until he showed up to help the turquoise terror there. After Sean only had attacked him a month previous when he did that fake retirement speech. He'd conned Liam into getting into the ring, one of his best friends. He invited him to the show that night to come and be a part of this retirement speech. But he turned his back on him, smashed him into that ring post, and Liam turned up the following month to get his revenge. So we had 3 stars actually from that night. Miles's dad, Fenton, and Casey. So I'm going to finish with talking about my own personal YouTube channel, or Doherty's Den. I've got that launched, and this is where this podcast is going to be in full. So if you're listening to this, you're most likely listening to it on my YouTube channel anyway, or Doherty's Den, because I'm going to upload this, just the audio, to the channel. And then in January, I've got the first ever YouTube special coming. And it's going to be about how I became a professional wrestler and started England's maddest wrestling show. So to keep it simple so you're not confused, this is the O'Doherty's Den podcast, episode 1. So I'm going to upload O'Doherty's Den podcast, which will be numbered in episodes, and they are going to be clearly written as podcast on the title. So they'll be these ones where it's got no video to go with it, it's just audio. And then I'm going to have all the other stuff that will be getting uploaded to the O'Doherty's Den channel, which will be standalone episodes within themselves, but they'll have all sorts mixed into them, as you'll see. And I'm going to talk more about that when they've already been launched, and you'll see what's coming. I've got a trailer video that will come out, so you'll get to see what you're going to expect in O'Doherty's Den in 2021. And on that note, my phone's ringing right now as we speak. Caden's calling us. So I'm going to answer this. I might even try and see if I can get it add it on to the end on the podcast here. I'll try and record this phone call when I answer the phone here. So I'm going to love you and leave you. I think I've talked about everything. One last time, O'Doherty's Den on YouTube. That was a point I wanted to talk more about, but I don't want to do your head in talking about myself. I've already talked for long enough now. I think this is enough. So O'Doherty's Den is coming to YouTube January 2021. It's going to be, first of all, posted on the Rise England YouTube channel, on the Rise Underground, because obviously we've already got those subscribers there, so I'm not going to get any views if I just upload it to my own channel because I've got no subscribers yet. So I'm going to upload them to the YouTube channel and then also to O'Doherty's Den, and then eventually they'll only be available at O'Doherty's Den. And these podcasts will be available only at O'Doherty's Den. I'll put previews on the Rise YouTube channel, but then they will link to these full episodes that you're listening to now. So I'm going to call Caden back now. I'll see if I can record this, and I'll add this on to the end. So, thanks for listening, and you're going to hear more of these now that I've got some clear direction in terms of what we're doing next year. And everything's crossed that we'll actually be able to have a few shows next year, whether that's in front of 20 people, 30 people, 100 people, or no people. We'll find a way somehow, and we will rise. Right, he said he's going to call us back any minute. So I've got this set up, I'm on my laptop, and hopefully this is going to work and we can have... Here he is, right on time.
Oh.
Hello.
Cheers, thanks a lot. Cheers, thank you. Bye-bye. Hello?
Hello. Is it working?
Yeah, well, I just observed there. Cracking times. Got a Foster's and a dark fruits, mixing it up a bit.
We need to go out as Mr. UK and Octagon without hoods on. Oh no, Octagon's got the mouth showing, hasn't it?
Yeah, and so does Mr. UK. Have you still got that Mr. UK mask?
Aye, but all the foil was hanging off it, wasn't it, last time I had it on?
Like, my ex-girlfriend got me that off, like, holiday from, like, she went on holiday with her mates and got that mask, and that was, like, quite sentimental. Then she took it on every session leave.
Remember when we both wore suits to go to watch WrestleMania and we had, like, pristine, like, white shirts on underneath and, like, shirt and tie on? Or was that a different night when we were the young Italians?
I had like a baby blue suit as well. I'd bought a baby blue suit, especially I'd like went to Primark and spent like 30 pounds a full like powder baby blue suit for it.
We used to wear the hoods and like masks and suits all the time, didn't we?
that was like our go-to stuff, because like you can't argue with like hoods and suits. It's like you're very honourable luchadors apparently. Like you go into the night very honourably.
It's absolutely hilarious though, wearing a suit with a rest. Like when you see people on a night out with a wrestling mask and a suit on, like can you beat that?
Like lucha hoods, suits, and like tape on the hands, like tape fingers and wrist tape on. And what you did as well for the very first ever Rise show, you bought like 15 hoods, thinking you'd sell them at the shows. But we just get drunk on like nights out, like planning the show, and we just like go out in different hoods. Just wear all these.
There's that photo of where it's like me and you and about 6 of my mates in the living room, all old nans like with hoods on. Have you seen it?
With different hoods on. So the funniest thing I've ever seen in my life is when the first ever Rise show, the video messed up where we were supposed to be announcing Too Cool. And you had a hood on because you didn't want the crowd to see, and you had to go sort the sound desk out, and you were like screaming like the most stressed I've ever seen. You were like running around with this full like faceless hood on, and you just hear your like voice emanating from like this mask with a faceless hood on.
It's orange like
screaming at people.
Orange faceless hood. That was absolutely hilarious when we were in the Crown, because obviously the Crown staff had even less idea than anyone how to work their own equipment, never mind anything else. So it was like me just screaming at the entire building trying to get the sound on while Rikishi's just on loop on the big screen. But we told all our mates to celebrate like England won the World Cup, and also you'd gone round and told everyone in the building.
We had all of our mates, so in that thing there was about maybe 70 to 80 people there, and I'd say at least 40 of them were our mates who did not have a clue about wrestling. But we give them the to celebrate like England had won the World Cup, and they're all funny lads anyway.
So because we said here, when this announcement comes on, when this was the pre-drinks, it wasn't even the wrestling show. There literally wasn't even a ring in the building. The show had been shut down already at this point. And we'd had a Fidian cutting promos all night, just a Fidian and down, cutting promos to like a very confused room, and we're absolutely blackout drunk.
Like, because the drinks were the cheapest in the UK. Blackout drunk isn't the word. Like, there's that hilarious video where Fidian announces that the council can do a show, and it's just my mate Pet stood up with his eyes shut like that, like very proudly. And we kept going around like telling the crowd to react to things like constantly, weren't we? Like, because he was like, because they were just sat down listening to Sophia's spectacle.
And then what about when they had when that fight kicked off, when Darwin and when we had that worked fight where they all, and we fucking had to like we rugby tackling feeding onto the bar. He's like, should I get the fucking band on, screaming, get the fucking band on.
Yeah, like, get away, hold on, let me just get back in this building. The weirdest thing about that, it was like Aaron, who runs that Flight Records band, that were playing, and the lead guy is kind of like quite a famous musician now. And we were like, get the band on now. Just sat down bored senseless because we made them come all night and wait and play one song.
Fucking hell, man. Like that story doesn't get told. We don't do that justice without like saying that in like with the video with the accompanying footage and all sorts. We need to do.
Yeah, you need to.
So that's what I'm saying about that. We'll do a full like a video when you come here. We'll film it with the proper lights and everything, where we'll talk about all the first show and stuff.
That would be like a great video just to watch the first show in its entirety. I know we tried to do it in a hotel room in Middlesbrough once and it didn't end. That's what you can never
I've never in my life even dared watch 10 seconds of it back, never mind post it.
So as of late I've been like, I try to do, like I heard years ago, like this thing where like you should watch a match every day. So for the last couple of years I've really been trying to like do that, and it doesn't matter if it's a 15-minute show or like a 15-minute match or a half-an-hour match or a 5-minute match, just watch a match every day and just like develop, like find out why you loved wrestling and find out what you like about wrestling and stuff like that. And lately, like, you know me, I'm the biggest, like, indie mid-2000s guy in the world. I can tell you every amazing red match of all time. I can tell you who was the first Ring of Honor champion. Like, that was in the Murphy Rec Center in 2002 and all that. But I'm, like, found this, like, deep love for All-Star. Because I went to some All-Star shows when I was a kid. But, like, my first ever wrestling shows, my dad took me to in Hartlepool Borough Hall. And I was like, that's the purest form of pro wrestling, what it's supposed to be, because them kids aren't on the internet. Them kids don't know what a tackle drop down spot is, and those kids don't know that, like, oh, this guy's good because he trained with so and so, and this guy, they don't care. They just enjoy the match for what it is, and it doesn't matter if it's a 2-minute squash match, and it doesn't matter what it is. It's a pure enjoyment of it. And to me, that's like the purest form of wrestling. Like these big brutes that people want to pay to see, and I think All Stars like a great example of doing it right. And I've just been like, but genuinely, if someone said to me right now, pick tickets to go see any wrestling, 100% I would. 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 100
Oh, we've lost him. Pick tickets to see any
Talking
wrestling.
about the
Hello?
drink beer.
It said,
Hello, can you hear me?
you said, pick tickets to see any wrestling there.
Yeah, I would genuinely pick, like, right, me and Chapman are going to go drink beers and just be, like, sit in the balcony so we're not, you know, disturbing anyone and just enjoy watching an All-Star show and just enjoy wrestling. That's what I think that's what's missing. People don't enjoy wrestling. People just, like, they see it as, like, a way to just vent all their anger as something for them to mourn about. It's literally, people don't enjoy it.
People watch it, like, in the same way that, like, football fans who where they make their life get ruined over the football result, in the same way that wrestling fans do that now, where they, like, pissed off about the performance. It's
exactly.
How do you know that they didn't mean to have a match like that? How do you know the match wasn't picture perfect and that was the exact match that the WWE wanted from them that night? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. That's the exact thing. Like that's the same thing I find with All-Star. If there's a 2-minute squash match where like the big monster like back in the day with the Giant Haystack, if Giant Haystack scores over 2 people and squashes the local lads to go in the main event against Big Daddy.
Well, look at the Turquoise Tour. He got his head kicked in for 10 minutes and then got the roll up because of Liam Slater and the roof come clean off.
Like, yeah, exactly. And like I think Rise fans in the same way are a lot like All-Star fans because they're not jaded.
Well, exactly, that's what's brilliant about Rise. And like the fans are so electric and on fire, it's because they reacting to it for what they see, and they, like the Brunel going to see the wrestling, like we give them the exact show that the Brunel wants for a wrestling show. Do you know what I mean?
Like exactly, and like lots of persons don't do that. Like they play this fictional 10 people that'll write about it on Twitter. I was saying to you on the phone the other day, Temple of Boom, like as much as some of the shows I don't like because it's so weird with the dressing room the way it is, and like the setup, and you don't go until super late. And sometimes it's a nightmare actually wrestling there. But for the fans, it's the best night of their lives. Like I've had my best matches there because of the crowd.
Well, it's like the Iger Studios shows feel totally different to any other shows as well, don't they?
Yeah, oh yeah, they've got like a very unique vibe to the Iger Studios. I kind of dig the Iger Studio vibe. I really like it. It's just like intimate, like cool sort of hipster vibe, but it's also got this like spontaneity where you know at any second something mental could happen. That's one dog down. I've just drank my Foster. I've got a dark fruit here. I'm gonna have to drink this and go find another Wetherspoon.